That's the problem with you alphas, Kiron said, his voice laced with venom even though it weak due to his heat. You think you are entitled to respect. It's pathetic, really. Varric chuckled darkly, circling Kiron like a predator sizing up its prey. You've got spirit, I'll give you that. But let's not forget who's in control here. He leaned down, bringing his face close to Kiron's. You might want to think twice before provoking me, sweetheart. You're not exactly in a position to make demands. The proximity made Kiron's stomach churn, not entirely from fear but from the way his heat made him aware of every alpha in the room. His body betrayed him, responding to Varric's presence even as his mind rebelled against it. The others in the struggling just as much. The two alphas stationed near the door were visibly tense, shifting uncomfortably and avoiding looking directly at Kiron. His scent was affecting them too as they tried to remain focused. One of them, a younger alpha, nervously spoke up. Varric, maybe we should move him. The scent is, distracting. Varric shot him a sharp look. Control yourself, idiot. The younger alpha's cheeks flushed with embarrassment, and he looked away. Kiron leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes, trying to ignore the discomfort. His voice was much weaker this time, almost muttering, "You're going to regret this. My bodyguard isn't the type to let things slide." Varric chuckled from where he stood, arms crossed. Ah, yes, the infamous Alpha Protector. Don't worry, sweetheart. He'll be dealt with. Kiron's eyes snapped open, his heart sinking. The thought of Reese out there, possibly walking into a trap, filled him with a mix of fear and anger. Reese moved swiftly through the forest surrounding the hideout, his sharp eyes scanning every shadow and his ears sensitive to the faintest sound. The information he'd got out of the captured palace spy had led him here, to a secluded fortress deep in the woods. He'd left the palace with a small team, but they were stationed a distance away, keeping a perimeter secure while Reese went ahead alone. He couldn't afford a misstep, not when Kiron was still out there, vulnerable and in heat. He finally approached the hideout. He inhaled sharply, and Kiron's scent hit him like a physical blow. It was thick and intoxicating, his heat unmistakable even from this distance. Reese growled low in his throat, pushing the primal instincts aside as he focused on the task at hand. The stone hallway was dimly lit, and Kiron approached the largest door at the end of the corridor. Kiron's scent was strongest here, but it was mixed with something sharp and bitter. Another alpha. Reese didn't hesitate. He pushed the door open just enough to peer inside, as he didn't want to barge in and get ambushed. He immediately recognized the alpha. It was the same one that danced with Kiron at the palace party. His heart sunk at what he saw. Kiron was pressed against a wooden table, his wrists now free but trembling. The alpha had one hand on the table beside Kiron and the other gripping the prince's shoulder. Kiron's face was flushed, his breathing ragged as he pushed weakly at Varric's chest. "Get off me," he spat, though his voice lacked its usual strength. "Oh, come now." Varric leaned closer. "You can't deny what your body's asking for. Why fight it?" "I said, get off." Kiron snapped, his hands trembling as he shoved harder. Reese's vision went red. The sight of Kiron in such a vulnerable position, being cornered by another alpha, was enough to make his blood boil. He slammed the door open with enough force to cause both Kiron and Varric to turn in shock. "Get your hands off him." Reese growled, his voice low and dangerous as he stepped inside, sword drawn and eyes blazing. Varric straightened and stepped back, his smirk returning as he eyed Reese. "Ah, I remember you. The famous protector. I was wondering when you'd show up." Kiron's eyes widened in relief. Reese breathed, his voice shaky as he immediately collapsed onto the table, his body trembling with exhaustion. Reese turned to him immediately, his expression hardening when he saw the state Kiron was in. Reese's patience snapped at that moment, and that smug expression Varric had in his face did not help in calming him down. "Varric," Reese growled as he stepped even closer. "You're going to regret ever laying a hand on him." Varric chuckled. "Oh, come on. Don't be so dramatic. You're acting like I did more than make your precious little prince squirm." The taunt hit its mark, and before Varric could react, Reese closed the distance between them. His fist connected with Varric's jaw, making a loud crack, the force of the blow sending the alpha stumbling back into the wall. "You think this is a game?" Reese snarled, his voice dangerously low. "Touching him, cornering him while he's in heat." Varric wiped at his bleeding lip. He didn't seem to mind all that much. The second punch was even harder, silencing Varric's words. Reese didn't stop there, as he continued to punch him, making Varric unable to defend himself. Kiron watched from the corner, with wide eyes as Reese dominated the fight. "You're nothing but a coward," Reese hissed, slamming Varric against the wall. "Preying on someone who couldn't defend himself. That's the lowest kind of filth." Varric coughed, his smirk long gone, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. Reese threw Varric to the ground, the alpha landing with a grunt. You're lucky I'm letting you live, Reese said coldly. The sound of boots echoed down the hallway as the palace guards Reese had stationed nearby stormed in. Take him and the rest of his crew to the dungeons, he commanded. I want them under constant watch. The guards nodded, hauling a battered Varric to his feet. I want every last one of these bastards locked away. Double the guards at the dungeon entrance. They don't deserve the luxury of escape. Varric struggled weakly against the grip of the guards, his arrogance now replaced with something closer to fear. Reese turned to Kiron, who was still leaning against the table, his body trembling as his heat continued to wreak havoc on him. Reese's demeanor shifted the moment he approached Kiron, kneeling in front of the prince. Kiron, he said gently, it's over. You're safe now. Kiron blinked at him, feeling relieved. You didn't have to go that hard, he murmured, though his voice lacked any real disapproval. Reese let out a faint laugh, shaking his head. Like hell I didn't. No one gets to treat you like that and walk away unharmed. Just take me back, Kiron said softly, his hand brushing briefly against Reese's arm before he pulled it away, embarrassed. Reese nodded, sliding an arm around Kiron's back and another under his knees. Let me carry you, he said firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. Kiron sighed but didn't protest, leaning into Reese's chest as the alpha stood. By the time they reached the palace, Kiron was barely awake, his head resting against Reese's shoulder. The guards at the gates immediately moved to open the doors, their eyes widening at the sight of their disheveled prince and the dark expression on Reese's face. Send word to the healer and tell the king and queen their son is safe, Reese ordered as they stepped inside. As Reese carried him up the staircase to his chambers, his mind was already racing. This can't happen again. He'd failed once, and it had almost cost him everything. Once Kiron was settled and safe in his room with the healer tending to him, Reese moved to sit next to Kiron on the bed, not wanting to leave him for another second. The next day, the air was lighter now, and Kiron could breathe normally. He was no longer in heat, but his body still felt weak from the whole ordeal. He sat on the edge of his bed, wrapped in a robe, sipping a cup of herbal tea brought by one of his attendants. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts, and before he could respond, the double doors swung open to reveal his parents, their faces a mixture of relief and concern. Kiron, his mother said, her voice warm yet laced with worrying as she hurried to his side. Kiron set his cup down and stood to greet them, though his father quickly motioned for him to sit. You're still recovering, the king said. He placed a hand on Kiron's shoulder, his touch both protective and firm. The queen sat on the edge of the bed beside Kiron, her eyes scanning him for any signs of harm. Are you all right, my darling? When we received word of your abduction, we feared the worst. I'm fine, mother. Reese got to me in time, Kiron replied. At the mention of Reese, the king's brow raised slightly. Yes, we were informed of his efforts. He's proven himself capable. More than capable, Kiron said quickly, his tone sharper than he intended. He saved me. I don't even want to think about what could have happened if he hadn't been there. The queen reached out, brushing a strand of hair from Kiron's face. It's not just about saving you, Kiron. Your safety must be constant. This incident proves how vulnerable you are, especially during delicate times. Kiron's cheeks flushed, and he glanced away. He didn't need the reminder of just how delicate his heat had made him. The king cleared his throat, drawing their attention back to him. This is precisely why we've been considering alternative measures to ensure your safety. Kiron frowned, sensing where this was going. What do you mean? The king crossed his arms, his commanding presence filling the room. Marriage, Kiron. A union with a strong alpha would provide you with the protection you clearly need. It's time to seriously consider it. Kiron's heart sank, feeling a mix of frustration and disbelief. You can't be serious, he said, his voice rising slightly. Your position demands it. You're a royal Omega, and your safety isn't just a personal matter. It's a matter of the kingdom. The king stated. Kiron stood abruptly, surprising both his parents. Though his legs wobbled slightly, he tried steadying himself. I don't need a suitor to protect me, he said, his voice strong despite his exhaustion. I have Reese. The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Kiron, Reese is a guard, a capable one, yes, but he is not your equal. A protector bound by duty is not the same as a partner bound by loyalty and love. I trust Reese more than I could ever trust some stranger you'd force me to marry. Kiron shot back, his hands clenching into fists. He's proven himself time and time again. No one else could have done what he did. Kiron, the queen began gently, trying to calm him. This isn't about Reese's abilities. It's about, she wasn't able to finish as she was cut off by Kiron. It's about you not listening to what I want. Kiron interrupted, his voice cracking slightly. You want me to marry someone for the sake of appearances, but I don't care about that. I care about being safe, and Reese keeps me safe. The king exchanged a glance with the queen. This isn't a discussion that can be decided on emotion alone. We'll revisit this matter when you're in a better state of mind, he said after a moment. I'm perfectly capable of making decisions about my own life, Kiron retorted, his fiery gaze meeting his father's. We understand how you feel, darling, the queen said gently, but you must see things from our perspective. We only want what's best for you. What's best for me is being with people I trust, and right now, that's Reese, Kiron said, his voice quieter but firm. The tension in the room was palpable, but neither parent pressed further. The king gave a curt nod, his expression unreadable. Rest, Kiron. We'll speak again soon. With that, the king and queen left the room, and after a moment, a soft knock on the door broke his thoughts. He looked up to see Reese entering, his expression tinged with concern. How did it go? The alpha asked, closing the door behind him. Kiron sighed. About as well as expected. They want me to get married for protection. Reese's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, waiting for Kiron to continue. I told them no, Kiron added, his voice soft but firm. I told them I have you. Reese's eyes widened slightly. Kiron. Kiron looked up at him, his gaze steady. I meant it, Reese. I don't need anyone else. I just need you. Reese swallowed hard, his usual composure faltering under the weight of Kiron's words. For a moment, he said nothing, his mind racing. Finally, he stepped closer, his voice low but certain. You'll always have me, no matter what. Kiron smiled faintly, the tension in his chest easing just a little. For now, that was enough. Reese returned to his quarters after a while, trying to focus on his updates on the palace's security. But no matter how much he tried to busy himself, he couldn't stop thinking about Kiron being married to someone else. Reese could see it so clearly. A royal alpha standing beside Kiron, claiming him, protecting him, and sharing moments that should have been Reese's. His hands were clenched into fists, his nails digging into his palms as frustration bubbled inside him. This is ridiculous, he muttered to himself, running a hand through his hair. He's the prince. His life is his own. But no matter how much he tried to rationalize it, the idea of another alpha touching Kiron, protecting Kiron, being with Kiron, made his stomach churn. He replayed Kiron's words from earlier in the day. I told them I have you. The memory should have soothed him, reassured him even, but it didn't. It only made the thought of losing Kiron feel more unbearable. What if the king and queen didn't listen? What if they forced Kiron into a marriage? Would Kiron fight back? He couldn't bear the thought of Kiron belonging to someone else. The next day, the king and queen entered the Omega's chambers, and behind them stood an elegant alpha. Reese stood to the side, his arms crossed, and expression blank. But beneath his calm exterior, he felt irritated. Kiron sat on a chair near the center of the hall, his posture a mix of defiance and politeness. He glanced at Reese briefly before he turned to greet his parents and the guest with a formal bow. This is Lord Kalian of Whitecliff, King Elric began, gesturing toward the alpha. His family has long been allies of our kingdom and he has proven himself as a capable leader. We thought it only fitting that the two of you meet. Kalian stepped forward, bowing deeply. Your Highness, he said, his voice warm and confident. It is an honor to finally meet you. Reese rolled his eyes and Kiron caught the movement out of the corner of his eye. He bit back a smirk. Thank you. Kiron replied with a smile. It's a pleasure to meet you as well. As the conversation continued, Kalian continued to talk about his accomplishments and the ways he could contribute to the kingdom. Your Highness, I believe that together, we could create a partnership that strengthens both our families and ensures your safety. Reese snorted and muttered under his breath, because a royal guard with years of experience isn't enough apparently. Kiron couldn't hold back a small laugh, quickly covering it with a cough. His mother's gaze landed on Reese, her expression stern but curious. The meeting continued for a while longer, with Kalian still talking about his accomplishments and Kiron offering polite responses even though he didn't care. All the while, Reese stood in the background, still commenting disapprovingly under his breath. At the end of the meeting, Kiron's mother approached him privately as the others exited the hall. Kiron, I've noticed something about your interactions with Captain Reese. Kiron tensed slightly but tried to hide it with a casual shrug. What about them? The queen, Alira, sat down across from him, folding her hands in her lap. He's protective certainly, that's his role, but there's more to it, isn't there? Kiron froze for a second before forcing a laugh. Mother, Reese is my guard. That's it. He takes his duties seriously. You should be pleased about that. The queen's lips curved into a smile, her eyes studying him intently. I saw how he behaved around Lord Kalian, how he reacted to the very idea of someone else being by your side. He may not have said it outright, but his disapproval was obvious. Reese doesn't like pompous nobles, you know how he is, he said. Elira tilted her head, her smile turning sly. Is that all it is? Or does he dislike the idea of someone else being close to you? The question made Kiron's stomach flip, and he quickly looked away. You're overthinking it, mother. Reese is loyal to the crown, nothing more. Elira leaned forward slightly, her expression softening. My dear, I'm your mother. I see things others might not, and I see the way he looks at you, the way he carries himself when you're near. That kind of loyalty isn't just for the crown. It's for you. Kiron felt his cheeks becoming hot, but he forced himself to remain calm. Even if that were true, which it isn't, Reese would never act on it. He knows his place. The queen's gaze turned thoughtful. Perhaps. But do you? Kiron blinked, startled by the question. What do you mean? Elira smiled knowingly. You say it's nothing, but you've been unusually enthusiastic whenever he's involved. And today when Lord Kalian proposed a partnership, you immediately pointed to Reese as your protector. Was that because he's capable, or because you can't imagine anyone else filling that role? Kiron opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. It's not something you need to answer right now, she said, rising gracefully from her seat. But I suggest you think about it. With that, she turned and walked out, leaving Kiron stunned. The next morning, Kiron was finishing breakfast in his dining room when a servant entered and bowed. Your Highness, the king requests your presence in the Grand Hall, she announced. Kiron's brow furrowed. Why? He did not say Your Highness. The servant replied. Kiron sighed, already suspecting this would not be a casual summoning. He made his way toward the hall, and Reese, who had been stationed outside the door, immediately fell into step beside him. Do you know what this is about? Kiron asked quietly, glancing at Reese. Reese shook his head. No, Your Highness. But whatever it is, I'll be there. Kiron gave a small nod, taking comfort in the Alpha's presence. When Kiron entered the Grand Hall, his stomach dropped. Standing beside his father was yet another Alpha, dressed in an attire that practically screamed suitor. The Queen's disapproval were evident on her face. Father, what is the meaning of this? Kiron began, his tone sharp. The king smiled, ignoring his son's obvious irritation. Kiron, this is Lord Thalos of Ironcrest. He has graciously traveled a great distance to meet you. Kiron folded his arms, his gaze glancing at his mother, who looked like she didn't want to be there. I thought we agreed there would be no more introductions without talking to me first. Now Kiron, you've been avoiding these discussions for far too long. It's time you seriously considered your future. Kiron opened his mouth to speak, but before he could even begin, Reese, who had been standing silently at Kiron's side, his jaw clenched and his fists tightly closed, cleared his throat loudly, drawing everyone's attention. The sight of yet another Alpha daring to think they had a right to claim Kiron was too much. I need to say something, Reese blurted, his voice firm. All eyes turned to him, and Kiron looked at him with wide eyes, startled, while the king raised an eyebrow in displeasure. Captain Reese, this is not the time or place for a guard to interrupt, the king said, his tone sharp. With all due respect, Your Majesty, I can't stand by any longer. Reese took a step forward, his eyes fixed on Kiron. I've served as your guard, protecting you with everything I have. But it's not just duty that drives me. I care for you, Kiron. More than I should, more than is appropriate for my position. Kiron's heart pounded as Reese's words hung in the air. The king's expression darkened. You dare you? I dare because I can't keep quiet anymore. Reese interrupted, his voice unwavering. He turned to the king, bowing slightly but not backing down. You can bring as many suitors as you want, Your Majesty, but none of them will care for and protect Kiron the way I do. The queen's mouth dropped in surprise, but she said nothing. Meanwhile, Thalos looked really uncomfortable. Kiron finally found his voice, though it was quiet. Reese. Reese looked back at him, his eyes softening. The king's expression was filled with fury and disbelief. You are overstepping, Captain Reese. This is unacceptable. Father, stop, Kiron said firmly, cutting him off. The room fell silent again as Kiron stepped forward. His gaze locked on Reese. You care for me? He asked softly, as if still trying to process the confession. Reese nodded, his expression sincere. More than I can say. Kiron's turned to his father. I refuse to entertain any more suitors, he said in a sharp tone. I don't want them. I don't need them. I have someone who's already proven his loyalty 1,000 times, and I trust him more than I'll ever trust a stranger. The king looked ready to argue, but the queen stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm. Let it be Elric, she said softly. The king hesitated, clearly torn. but the look in his wife's eyes made him step back. As Kiron's parents exited the hall, Kiron and Reese were left alone. Did you really mean it? Reese stepped closer, his eyes meeting Kiron's. Every word. A small smile tugged at Kiron's lips. Good. Because I don't think I could imagine anyone else by my side either. You know, Kiron began, crossing his arms. You didn't have to make such a dramatic confession in front of everyone. Were you jealous of Thalos? Reese, standing a few feet away, met Kiron's gaze. Of course I was, he said bluntly, with no hesitation. Kiron's brows lifted in surprise. You're not even going to deny it. Why would I? I'll be honest, Kiron, Reese started. The thought of you being with anyone else drives me crazy. You deserve someone who knows you, protects you, and cares for you. Someone who won't see you as just a prize but as everything. I'm not trying to brag, but I do care for you and I'd do anything to protect you. Kiron's breath hitched at the honesty in Reese's voice. He forced himself to look up, only to find Reese staring at him with such sincerity that his knees almost gave out. Kiron pressed his lips together, unsure how to respond. His teasing had backfired on him, and now he felt like he was the one trapped. After a moment, Kiron finally muttered, You're awfully smug for someone who just bared his soul in front of my parents. Reese grinned. And I'd do it again if it means you'd stop looking at anyone else. Kiron's face burned, but he couldn't stop the small shy smile that spread across his lips. He reached up and lightly shoved Reese's chest playfully. You're impossible, and you're irresistible, Reese replied smoothly. Kiron let out a huff, turning away before Reese could see just how much his words affected him. But Reese's quiet chuckle behind him told him he already knew. That night, Kiron laid on his bed, his mind replaying Reese's confession, his intense gaze. The way he'd confessed his feelings so confidently. It was all so attractive to him that he couldn't stop thinking about it. The prince groaned, burying his face in his pillow. Why couldn't Reese be awkward or flustered like a normal person? He just had to be infuriatingly composed, throwing Kiron completely off balance. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Come in, Kiron called, sitting up. The door opened, revealing Reese, still in his guard uniform. Kiron's heart skipped a beat, though he quickly masked it with a frown. Do you ever sleep? Kiron teased. Reese smirked, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. I'd sleep more if you didn't make me worrying so much. Kiron rolled his eyes, softly smiling. I'm fine, Reese. You don't need to babysit me. Reese crossed the room in a few long strides, stopping just short of the bed. You're the one who got kidnapped a few days ago. Forgive me for being cautious. Kiron opened his mouth to argue but found himself distracted by the way Reese leaned down slightly, his intense gaze locking onto Kiron's. You're hovering, Kiron muttered, feeling his face heat. Am I? Maybe you're just imagining things. Reese teased. Kiron glared, though it was half-hearted. I'm not. And if you're here to lecture me, you can save it for tomorrow. Reese's smirk widened. I'm not here to lecture you, just making sure you're all right. I told you I'm fine, Kiron insisted, his voice quieter now. Reese tilted his head. You don't look fine. You look flustered. Kiron scoffed, but his face betrayed him, turning a dark shade of pink. I'm not flustered. Oh, Reese stepped closer, his tone laced with amusement. Then why can't you look me in the eye? I can, Kiron shot back, though his gaze was on a spot over Reese's shoulder. Reese chuckled and before Kiron could react, he placed one hand against the bed frame beside Kiron's head, leaning in close. Kiron's breath hitched as Reese moved even closer. Still not flustered? Reese asked, his voice slow and teasing. Kiron swallowed hard, his heart pounding. You're insufferable, you know that? Reese grinned, his face merely inches from Kiron's. Maybe, but you haven't told me to back off yet. Kiron glared up at him, though he still didn't tell him to back off. Do you enjoy tormenting me? Kiron said. Reese's smirk softened into something more genuine. No. I just like seeing you like this. Like what? Flustered. Reese said simply, his free hand coming up to lightly brush Kiron's cheek. You're impossible, Kiron whispered out, his voice barely audible. And you're adorable. Reese's thumb grazed over Kiron's heated skin. For a moment, neither of them spoke, until finally, Kiron looked up, his voice trembling, but steady enough to make his point. I like you too, he admitted, his cheeks redder than ever. Reese froze, his eyes widening slightly before softening into the warmest expression Kiron had ever seen. You do. Kiron nodded, avoiding Reese's gaze. But don't let it go to your head. Reese chuckled, too late. Kiron groaned, covering his face with his hands. I hate you. No, you don't, Reese teased, gently pulling Kiron's hands away from his face. Shut up, Kiron muttered. Reese leaned in and whispered. Make me. Kiron's blush deepened and the silence between them stretched. Reese's hand stayed on Kiron's chin. His eyes were locked on Kiron's, waiting for any sign of hesitation. Kiron wanted to say something, anything, but instead his gaze dropped to Reese's lips. A glance that he hoped Reese wouldn't notice, but, of course he did. Reese's lips curved into a small knowing smile. You keep looking at me like that and I won't be able to hold back. Then don't hold back, Kiron whispered, his voice barely audible. That was all the permission Reese needed. He leaned in slowly, giving Kiron time to change his mind, but the prince didn't. When their lips met, it was soft at first, as if both of them were testing the waters. But the moment Kiron responded, the kiss deepened. Reese's hand rested on Kiron's waist, drawing him closer as if he couldn't bear the distance anymore. The kiss was everything and nothing Kiron had expected. It was tender but demanding, careful but unrestrained. Reese kissed him like he was something precious, something to be cherished, and Kiron couldn't help but melt into it. When they finally broke apart, Reese wrapped an arm around him, holding him close as he pressed a soft kiss to the top of his head. The next day, Kiron found himself waking up later than usual. He stretched lazily, the memory of the night before making a faint smile tug at his lips. As he finished getting dressed for the day, there was a knock at the door. Come in, Kiron called, thinking it was one of the palace attendants. The doors opened to reveal his parents. Mother, father, Kiron said, blinking in surprise. I wasn't expecting you. We weren't planning on coming, either, the king admitted, his tone soft. But there are things that I need to say. The queen placed a hand on her husband's arm, silently encouraging him to continue. Kiron raised an eyebrow, sitting on the edge of his bed as he folded his arms. All right, what's this about? The king sighed, running a hand through his neatly combed hair. Kiron, I owe you an apology. That caught the prince off guard. His father apologizing. That didn't happen often. I'm apologizing for pressuring you into marriage. While I do believe you deserve a partner who will keep you safe and happy, I've come to realize that I've been going about it the wrong way. Kiron's mouth opened, then closed. For once, he was not sure of what to say. I was worried, and I thought finding you a powerful partner would ease that fear. But it seems I was blind to what was right in front of me. Kiron's blinked confused. What are you talking about? The king exchanged a glance with the queen before turning back to his son, Reese. Kiron's heart skipped a beat. Reese. Yes, the king said firmly. He's the one who's been by your side through everything. He's strong-willed, protective and more than capable of keeping you safe. But more than that, it's clear to me that he cares about you deeply. And judging by the way you've been looking at him, I'd say the feeling is mutual. Kiron's face turned red, but he didn't deny it. The queen stepped forward, smiling gently. We only want you to be happy, Kiron. If Reese is the one who makes you feel safe and loved, then we support you. Kiron's mouth went dry. He had expected arguments, lectures, even ultimatums, but not this. You really mean that? Of course, the king said. I was a fool to think I could dictate who you should be with. And if Reese makes you happy, then I'll be the first to welcome him into this family. Thank you, Kiron said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. The queen smiled, leaning down to kiss her son's forehead. You deserve to be happy, my darling. Now, where is that alpha? I think it's time we had a proper conversation. Kiron laughed softly, his heart feeling lighter than it had in weeks. Kiron and his parents walked to the grand sitting room where Reese was waiting. Reese, the king said, his voice carrying authority but was also gentle. I've been too focused on my own fears about Kiron's safety, but I've seen how much you care for my son. I've seen how much he cares for you. Reese stepped forward. Your Majesty, But the king held up a hand, stopping him. There's no need for formalities now. You've already proven that you'll do anything for Kiron and I can see that the feelings between you are mutual. That's all I need to know. Reese turned to the king, his voice wavering for the first time. So you're saying you accept this? The king nodded firmly. Yes, he turned to Kiron and stated, if Reese is the one you want, then I'll accept it. Kiron could hardly breathe, his heart pounding so loudly he thought it might burst. This was happening. This was real. They were no longer just protector and prince. They were something more. The day of the wedding came faster than either of them anticipated. Kiron had felt his nerves increasing as the day progressed. The ceremony had been beautiful and formal. He realized that was no longer just a prince. He was now someone's partner, someone's spouse, and that someone just happened to be the man who had been silently protecting him for as long as he could remember. Reese, of course, had been calm through it all, his steady presence grounding Kiron. Even as vows were exchanged, Reese's hand on his was the only thing that kept him from floating away with the surrealness of it all. As the evening wound down and the guests began to leave, Kiron rested his head against Reese's shoulders, his eyes heavy with exhaustion but his heart full. So I guess this means you're stuck with me now. Reese pressed his lips on Kiron's, his voice soft but full of warmth. Forever, Kiron, and I wouldn't have it any other way.